Hi gang, here we are again. Thank you very much for joining me this evening for this live video, how to open up after you have closed down. So if you are watching this live or if you're catching the replay, say hi to me, pop a comment below, give me some likes, give me some hearts, let me know you're watching. And welcome to the Growth Compass Live, where we explore topics related to your health, your well-being, mental, physical, emotional stuff. So your feedback, your comments are really, really important to me. They help me to figure out what I'm doing, quite frankly. And your interaction is always welcome, and it's always welcome. I'll say it twice, why not? Hey Paula, how are you doing, my love? Good to talk to you before. So last week, we spoke about how to deal with difficult parents, just a quick recap. And your happiness homework was to notice your internal reactions to when you're with your parents. So notice when you get triggered, notice the feelings within you, and then try to apply some of the principles that we spoke about in situ, in context. So you're remembering to remember what you know. Remember to remember what you have learnt. Because it's when we put it in context, the brain starts to learn a new pattern. So it's about breathing, feeling in that moment and reframing. And then practice, 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 because the mind learns through repetition. So let me know how you got on with your happiness homework last week. And today's discussion is all about how to open up after you've closed down. And I think this is a really important topic. It's definitely the core of therapy. So, if you've had any kind of upbringing, if you've had a less than perfect parenting, then you're probably going to have shut down in some way. And if you've had traumatic relationships, if you've had traumatic experiences, perhaps at school, perhaps with bullying, then you're going to have shut down in some way. So, some of the things I speak about might resonate with you, they might not. But see if you can apply it to your own life. So the 4 areas of discussion this evening are: what does shutting down look like? Why do we shut down? Why should we consider opening back up? And how can we open back up? So 4 really important questions. So a quick hi to Morna, Paula and Paul so far. Okay, so what does shutting down look like? Well, it would be great to get your thoughts as well on what you think shutting down looks like in your life. So perhaps we can share, and perhaps somebody might resonate with you, what you've said. So please don't be shy about speaking up, because what you say might help somebody else. So I've come up with 3 things that I think shutting down looks like. And one of those is sulking. One of those is shutting people out or ghosting people. And the third one is numbing out. So the first one is sulking, and this can happen sort of during an argument with a loved one or a parent or a friend, and you sulk because you feel like shutting people out, it's a sort of a defense mechanism. You feel self-righteous, you feel like you weren't getting your needs met, and so you're going to shut down and shut that person out and get your needs met elsewhere. Maybe you feel like you've been treated unfairly, and you just think that you're right and they are wrong. And so we can sort of go into a big old sulk. We can stop talking to the person that we really love, and we can behave a bit like a child, to be honest. And this is my one. Okay, so please don't think that I'm perfect just because I do therapy. Far from it. I have changed a lot, but there's still things to work on. I still do get triggered. Hi Steve. So Yes, sulking is like the spoilt child coming out, and we often spit our dummy out. We shut down to kind of stonewall our partner, which is really not good. It's not good for your relationships at all, because your partner's going to feel rejected, and if somebody feels rejected, they're going to shut down as well. They're not going to give you the best of them. So it's kind of a silent but deadly way of asserting power over somebody else. So the second way that we shut down is to shut people out of our lives completely, or ghosting people. And the reason why we do this often is because we don't feel like we've got the skills to communicate effectively with that person. Or even if we don't feel, sometimes we might not feel, but sometimes we might not even know that we don't have the skills. We just think they're wrong, I'm right, so F off, sort of thing. And often we can write people off as being ignorant, stupid, worthless, pathetic, blah, 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 fill in the blanks. And we impose a massive judgment over those people. And we sort of shut down our compassion towards other people. We shut down our understanding as to why that person might be behaving in a certain way. So the third area is numbing out. So I think most of what we're going to be talking about today is numbing out. So we can numb out when our feelings get too overwhelming or too painful. And there's this belief as well that, feeling things is going to slow me down. Hi, Joe. Feeling things is going to slow me down. It's going to mean I've got to take time off work. It's going to mean I'm going to be a mess. It's going to mean I've got to deal with and process all the shit that comes out. So we put a lid on it. We numb out. It's so much easier to get through life numb with a few kind of coping mechanisms like drink, drugs, alcohol, sex, porn, whatever, than to actually deal with our stuff and get through life properly. So we think numbing out is the easy way out, but it's not really, because, long term it doesn't really serve us, because we get ourselves into all sorts of sticky wickets with other addictions that pop up as a sort of temporary pleasure. So the addiction itself can be a way that we feel again, because as humans we have to feel. We have a nervous system, we have chemistry, and if we're numbing out, there's a part of us that is craving feeling again. So and numbing out also shows up as well, not just with addiction to substances and people. Numbing out shows up as spending a disproportionate amount of time at work, hobbies, tinkering in the garage, playing your instrument, any kind of hobby that you can use to avoid confronting inner pain or dealing with difficult situations that you'd rather not. So have a little audit. So this is an invitation for you to have a little audit and to figure out, where do you shut down in your life? Who are you avoiding? And who are you avoiding those difficult conversations with? Where are you not speaking your truth? And I found myself doing this a little bit with my parents sometimes. Feeling like I am the one that has to be the adult in the relationship because I'm the therapist. But actually, I realised that I do need to be more open and tell them how much I love them, because one day they're not going to be around, and I want to make sure that I don't regret not telling them how much I love them. I'm tearing up as we speak, really. Okay, so why do we do this? Why do we shut down? So shutting down is actually a perfectly normal response to physical, mental and emotional pain and overwhelm. When things get too much for our systems, then we go, no, and we cut off. There's a cut off. I'm going to talk more about this, but this cut off is your survival. You overthink, but you don't feel. And yeah, so when perceived stress gets too high for you, so perceived stress gets too high, your prefrontal cortex actually goes offline and all of the blood gets redirected to your amygdala. So your amygdala is responsible for your fight-flight response, and that's why when you get overly stressed, when you're overwhelmed, when everything's got too much, you can behave irrationally, and that is numbing out as well. So this is a good thing, because your mind, if you were in a war zone, you'd need to numb out against all the trauma going off around you. But we're not in a war zone. So the key statement here is perceived stress. We're not at war, but we are at war with ourselves sometimes, and we may always have been at war with ourselves, especially if you or someone you know has experienced developmental trauma. That's trauma that happened or abuse that happened right from a young age. You would have shut down right from an early age, causing all sorts of problems, but that is how you coped. It's how you survived in the world, and it definitely works for a while, but it stops working as you get into your midlife. It stops working because of the changing hormones and the changing biology. That behaviour that you had in your teens, 20s and early 30s stops working in your 40s, 50s and 60s. That's why the majority of therapy patients are in their midlife. So the other thing to consider is that shutting down or numbing out you might be getting something from that. So this is called secondary gain. So you might actually be finding belonging in shutting down or numbing out. So you might be a female, for example, who has shut down emotionally, but you find solace and belonging perhaps in male company, because men typically, traditionally, historically, aren't as open as women, although that's changing now, thankfully. Maybe you're the kind of person that finds that sense of belonging shutting down away from other people, but finding it in computer games, for example, especially these online games. You're out of the real world, you're disconnected from the real world, but you're finding a sense of belonging in that kind of cyber world. So maybe you're shutting down and numbing out to give yourself a permission to play small in the world. But maybe what you really want to do is play bigger in the world, but that feels too painful. So one of the main reasons we shut down is self-protection. It's like putting a shell around the part of you that you deem to be weak or imperfect or shameful. And maybe you learnt, wait 1 second. So maybe you learnt that your emotional side, for example, alienated your parents. And I know that for me a little bit, I was very emotional, I was very creative, I was very liberal, and it sort of freaked my parents out a little bit because they're a bit conservative and they couldn't really handle it. And so part of that shiny, liberated, open person shut down. Or maybe, tragically, maybe there was sexual abuse in your family. And often I see with some of my clients, where there's been abuse, that person will shut down their beauty or their sexiness because it caused them pain when they were younger. So your body is always trying to protect you. Self-protection, that's why we shut down. So all human beings do have a tendency to close down. We do. It's kind of part of who we are, really. And the reason being that, shame, hurt, pain, rejection, fear, humiliation, embarrassment, these are all tricky and difficult feelings to embody, really, to allow into our bodies. And we are literally trying to protect our ego from having to feel these feelings, because our ego thinks they're wrong. But they're not necessarily wrong, you see. It's just the ego that thinks they're wrong, the personality self, the persona self. And the key to opening back up again is to have the courage to feel. And I'm going to talk more about that later on. But the thing is, maybe shutting down, the other reason why we don't open back up again is because shutting down can become so familiar. We don't even know that we're doing it half the time. We've perpetuated it. It's been a story. It's been a narrative through our entire lives. And, you know, if you don't know what you don't know. So this is why it's important to shine a light and to become conscious about your habits where you're shutting down in your life. Or maybe you do know that you're shutting down, but the thought of opening back up again and the thought of feeling those feelings fills you with absolute dread and makes you feel very, very scared. And why wouldn't it? So you're protecting against the very thing that you need to do to heal the protection part of you, if you know what I mean. It's a bit of a conundrum. So we've spoken about those two things. So the third question we're going to ask in this discussion is, why on earth should we face this fear of opening back up again? Why should we do it? Isn't it better just to shut down and not feel the pain? But there's a reason why I think we need to open up. And I think you'll probably all agree with me. Because shutting down causes massive physical and mental health problems. So your risk of cardiac disease actually goes up by 100% if you're in a toxic defensive relationship. And if you're shutting down, you probably are. And the reason why that happens is because shutting down emotionally constricts your arteries, right? It makes sense, doesn't it? When we shut down emotionally, we constrict. So our muscles tighten, our immune system weakens, and we end up with problems. So there's a saying, you know, you can suppress your emotions. Of course you can do that, but you can never actually eradicate them. So you can suppress them, of course, but they're always going to be there. And if that happens, what that does is it causes other organs. It causes your organs to weep. So there's a quote by Dr. Maudsley, who is a cancer doctor. Feelings that cannot be expressed in tears causes other organs to weep. So feelings that cannot be expressed in tears causes other organs to weep. And I just think that is so true. I mean, if that's not a reason to face your fear and open back up again, I don't know what is. So sooner or later, you know, you'll have a calling, you'll have a wake-up call. Your body, you know, it'll hit the physical body. You'll be in some kind of pain or disease or, excuse me, okay, maybe this is mine. My calling to open back up. It will hit the body eventually. So one of my all-time favourite clients recently was a wonderful, gorgeous, handsome, tall, gay man. And he hadn't come out to his dad. And he was basically living with anxiety. He didn't like the sound of his voice. He couldn't speak up at work. And, you know, he felt very ashamed of himself. So we got him to open up. He came to me with colitis as well. No wonder he had colitis, because of all of that authenticity was bottled up inside of him. And after treatment with me, he ended up telling his dad that he was a proud gay man, and his dad took it so easily, so lightly, and gave his son, you know, a massive hug. And it was such a beautiful story to hear that after he'd come out, he felt so much lighter, you know, because he was no longer living a lie, and he was able to just be himself, and he opened up his voice. You know, he got teased as a child for having a different kind of voice because I think it was slightly higher pitched, and that's why he felt he was being judged for the way that he sounded. So he started singing lessons, he started in a choir, and you know, he's really facing all of those fears, and that is the solution. If you can't, then you must. Hi, we've got everyone watching. Hi, Roz. Hi, Anna. Hi, Lorna. Tonya, Eileen, Bridget, Stuart, and Joe. Wow, loads of people. A big fat welcome to you. So sooner or later, you know, if you're shutting down, if you're numbing out, it's going to hit your body. Bad back, headaches, reoccurring colds, heart palpitations, gallstones, thyroid issues. Eventually it will hit your body. So of course, you know, all of these feelings, they are difficult to deal with. You know, it's not easy. This path of opening up is not for the faint-hearted. You have to be brave. But here's the thing, once you feel it, once you commit to feeling it, once you express it, once you release it in some way, shape or form, you don't have to live in it anymore. You can let it go. And a lot of people think that if they go to the emotion, they're going to be there forever, and that's it. Once they open the can of worms, they're going to be there forever. You won't be there forever. At worst, you'll be there for a month, 2 months, 3 months. But when you really go deep and you commit to feeling, it comes out of you quickly. So I've digressed and gone off my notes. Let me just read these because I don't want you to miss out on anything. So closing down, numbing out affects all of our relationships. Because it's hard work to maintain that facade. Eventually, you know, we get tension, we get rigid, and we get constriction when we try to maintain a facade. And you'll remain split, you'll remain conflicted because you're not in alignment. Your thoughts, your behaviours, your actions, your feelings are not in alignment with the truth about who you really are. You're acting. And that's no good. You want to be in alignment with yourself. You don't want anxiety. You don't want to be burnt out. You don't want depression. You don't want to create OCD type behaviours to protect yourself against feeling, against being who you really are. So ultimately, if you continue protecting, defending and shutting down, you will never grow. You will stay stuck. You will stay in stasis forever. And digressing slightly here, I think this is what is happening in the world right now. I think politics, government, it's stuck. It's at, we've been acting in a sort of defensive, protective way for, I don't know, centuries. I failed my history A-level, by the way, so I'm not very good at history. I don't know much about politics and religion, but I know what I feel. And what I feel in terms of government is it's very sticky, it's very defensive, it's very old-fashioned. So it's run its course. And if you are interested in the politics of love, you need to check out Marianne Williamson, who is running for office in the USA, and she is gaining so much momentum. And I know some of you watching are into politics, so if you've not heard of Marianne Williamson, you really need to check out what she is doing in America right now. Her new book is called The Politics of Love, and it's exactly about what I'm talking about in this on a personal level. She's trying to get that done in a sort of macro. If this is the micro, she's trying to get countries, nations, states to open up and be less defensive and feel more. Because when you feel, you can access those incredibly important emotions such as compassion and kindness. But we've got to get rid of the layers first. We've got to get rid of the shame, the hurt, the fear of rejection, fear of humiliation, fear of being judged, and all of that stuff. So this brings me on to my final point then. How do we open up? Well, I think you've guessed it by now. We have to develop the courage to feel difficult feelings. Now, you might be asking, well, how is that possible if someone you know or you yourself has been traumatized? Maybe you were abused, maybe you experienced something that caused a lot of trauma, maybe even PTSD. Well, you have to work with a therapist, and I'm really passionate about this. If you try and do this on your own, it might not work because you need support in those situations. So if you've shut down for a very long time and there's a cut off between your head and your feelings, starting to open back up again, your body is going to have a visceral reaction. Your body is going to go, oh my God, I don't like this. This is unfamiliar. What the hell's happening? And then it's going to try to tighten up and close even more. It's a natural response. So with a therapist, they can help you to go with it, go with that feeling, so open. They can support you, and then when the time is right, you can close the gate again, and then it's that sort of gentle opening and closing until it's finally out. If your trauma has not been if your abuse hasn't been traumatic, you might be able to just open up in one go and it's all done and dusted in one session. And you might need little top-ups through the year or through your life. But, it really depends on the scale of how much you've let go of already, how much trauma there was in the first place. And I really do advocate working with somebody who you trust and who you feel safe with, because it's all about, you need to feel safe if you're going to open up again. It's really important for you to understand why you shut down in the first place. And of course, when you're looking at your patterns, you can do that with a hypnotherapist or you can do that with a standard therapist. But it's important to go back and take a look at why. Why did you shut down in the first place? Because when you know why, you've got more leverage to open back up again, because you realize, you did it then when you were a child. You don't need to do it now as an adult. It's not serving you now as an adult. So there are certainly in the therapy that I do, the rapid transformational therapy, we really address that wholeheartedly and completely in the session. We get to the specifics of your case. So, if you're going to open up after closing down, you've got to make a commitment to do this. You've got to make a commitment and to realize that, from this point forward, nothing is worth shutting down over. And there's a book, you might have come across it, called The Untethered Soul. And a lot of what I'm speaking about is coming from the untethered soul. And he says in here, be 100% committed to your staying open, even in the face of disappointment, even in the face of overwhelm, doubt, shame, grief, loss. Be willing and be prepared to feel it all. If you can feel it, you can heal it. Once you've felt it, you can then let it go much quicker, much easier. So you can open up in many different ways. There's journaling, you can speak to a therapist, you can have hypnotherapy, you can use physical expression, singing, dancing, movement, dynamic meditation, hollering, but even things like listening to music can help you open up. So, for example, I worked with a client who really couldn't go into hypnosis. She didn't want to go to her feelings, and her prescription was listen to some music, start to gently nudge those emotions, especially things like cinematic music. Find some music that really stirs your soul and listen to it. Instead of putting a box set on in the evening, listen to some music instead for a couple of hours and see how that feels against your nervous system. Have a good cry, have a good scream, have a good shout if you need to. Give yourself that time and that space to do it. Music is wonderful for this because Music is ephemeral, and emotions are ephemeral as well. They're not really earthly. They don't really sort of have a dense physicality like the body. So music can speak. That's why music can speak to the emotions, because it's sort of the same vibrational frequency. What else? How else can you open up? If you've had sexual abuse in the past or physical abuse, you might want to investigate tantra or conscious sexuality, where you are learning to embody sexual energy a bit more. Often, if we're stuck in our head, we're not going to be able to enjoy sex. And sex is one of those things that can be deeply healing, and it's deeply, sex is a real feeling thing. So if you're cut off, learning to reconnect yourself through tantra and conscious sexuality is a great thing to do. I myself am doing a tantra course with my partner in February next year, with a couple called Sai and Ash. Just thought I'd throw that out there because it's an area that I would like to explore a little bit more. Another way you can open back up is to just try new things. Mix it up. Instead of going to the same cafe every day, go try a different cafe. Try a new restaurant. Go to a new clothes shop that you wouldn't normally shop in. Try a new hobby. And another way you can open up is, I love this one actually, be willing to be wrong. So when we numb out, we get defensive, we feel self-righteous. When we are willing to be wrong, we soften, we expand, we open up. We feel that painful feeling of tail between the legs, that painful feeling of humbleness, so to speak. And it teaches us how to be vulnerable in a certain situation. So being willing to be wrong enables vulnerability. And if you can learn to be vulnerable in certain situations, even if it's painful, you're learning to be open. And you're learning to just let it pass, let it move through the mind and body, just let it flow. And my last one is be willing to give up the control. So if you're the kind of person that likes to be in control all of the time, that maybe has little OCD habits that make you feel like you're in control, maybe you want to consider the possibility of letting go of some of that control. Be willing to face the fear and the pain of giving up some of that control, because that's your answer. Be willing to feel the pain. There's a chapter in this book actually called Pain is the Price of Freedom. If you want freedom, you've got to be willing to feel some pain. Okay, so happiness homework then. I would like you to ask yourself, where do I shut down? Do an audit, go through your life, the next week, days, months, whatever. Go through your life and ask yourself, where do I shut down? Where am I not letting the good stuff in? And ask yourself, why do I shut down? This might involve a therapist, because you'll need to do some regression and you'll need to be supported whilst doing that. Come and see me if you want to, or visit my website, sallygarozzo.com, if you need to know more about what I do. And then ask yourself, for you, why is it personally important that you open up again? What are those reasons? Is there an illness that you need to cure? Is there relationships that you need to improve? You will know. I don't know that because I'm not talking to you right now, one-to-one, but you will know that. And then ask yourself, am I committed to cultivating the bravery and the courage required to feeling the fear and opening back up again? All right. Who do you need to open back up to? Is it yourself? Is it your parents? Is it your partner? Is it your kids? Is it your sibling? Is it a teacher? Who do you need to open back up to? Who do you need to be vulnerable with? And maybe you could write a letter to them. You don't need to give it to them, but journaling, letter writing is another way that you can help yourself to open up, or at least get clear on what it is that you want to say. So that's it. That's all I've got to say on the subject at the moment. Do let me know. Let me know which opening up modality you choose. Is it singing? Is it movement? Is it dynamic meditation? What was it for you? Remember, I also teach singing. So if you are in Brighton, you can have a one-to-one lesson with me, or we can do something via Zoom. So that is all from me. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have found it useful. Drop a comment down below and I will respond. Take care, everybody. Have a lovely evening, and I will see you in the group in the week, and I'll see you next week for another live video. Bye.